It's 12:05, which means Jeopardy has come to an end. Just kidding, but I hope you enjoyed that little introductory music there. Thank you all for joining us today. In case you didn't know, this forum is presented by Partners of Scott County Watersheds and is all about green infrastructure and rainscaping. So if you're not familiar with Partners, we are a nonprofit based here in Scott County, Iowa, dedicated to improving the health of our watersheds and the stewardship of them as well. So I have a few quick slides here to start us off. Just some Zoom housekeeping. This presentation will be recorded and uploaded to our website or our YouTube page, excuse me, shortly after this presentation, probably within the next few days. Any questions that you have throughout the presentation, please enter them in the Q&A box, which you can see down at the bottom of your screen. And then if you have any questions regarding technical difficulties, then use the chat function to send to ATEC, our web facilitator. That just helps us to keep all of the questions in one place. And we know that you guys love this so much, so be sure to mark your calendars for the next one, which is going to be on May 17th. And that's going to be with some students from Augustana College who have been working on some projects, studying some different components of watersheds in our county. Then we do have some cleanups as well. If you're tired of sitting on the computer, you want to get outside, we have some coming up there. So do be sure to check those out and register for them on Extreme Cleanup. Of course, this wouldn't be possible without our partners, so we do have to shout them out here. And one of our partners that's not listed on here is iSwept, which is who Noah is with, so that works out really well. If you're interested in becoming a partner on any different level, we have lots of options available, so do be sure to look at those and take a look on our website for more information. And that's really all I got for introductions here. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Noah, who is going to be our speaker today. So Noah was, let me stop this so he can switch on over. Noah was born and raised here in the Quad Cities in Davenport. He is the Eastern Iowa coordinator, excuse me, for the Iowa Stormwater Education Partnership. And with that, he develops educational materials, coordinates training programs, works with Eastern Iowa member cities or organizations like Partners on different programs. And before that, he was with River Action. So I'll let him take the reign here now. Again, any questions, feel free to enter them into the Q&A. We'll answer those at the end. But without further ado, Noah, take it away.
Thanks, Kelsey. Share my screen here. Ooh. All right. Can we see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So I'm Noah Truesdell with iSwept, and I'll be talking to you here about green infrastructure and rainscaping here in Iowa. First of all, Iowa Stormwater Education Partnership, we're a nonprofit organization here in Iowa, and we develop educational resources and training for MS4 member cities, other member cities and counties, and educational partners like Partners of Scott County Watershed. So what I'll be talking about today is the changes in our landscapes here in Iowa and how that changed the hydrology. Water quality concerns with stormwater management. The stormwater management paradigm shift over the years from like the 70s till today, and a comprehensive approach to managing stormwater. Okay, so this is the changes in our hydrology. Sorry, are we seeing this? I'll have to get rid of that. Oops. So before we had what was called like a groundwater recharge landscape. So you'll see there's a lot of infiltration into the soil, 25% deep infiltration and 25% shallow infiltration, and only 10% runoff. And now, as we've converted to a gray landscape or impervious surfaces with cities and urbanization, there's a lot more runoff, 55%, and a lot less infiltration. So with green infrastructure and rainscaping practices, we are attempting to get back to a more natural historical hydrology. And this is just for reference. This is an area in Iowa in 1990, next to the same area in 2009. And you can see a lot of like the agricultural areas were converted to residential and increased impervious surfaces. These are some pictures of the South Skunk River. And here it is at base flow versus flood stage. And when you get more impervious surfaces, there's an increased chances of like flash flooding, and you know, the river gets over its banks and can collect a lot of pollution from the city streets, trash, and you know, just like oils, sediment that could be on the roads and picked up from other landscapes too. And what you have when you have more flooding like that is stream bank and channel instability. You can see the stream bank is eroded, and that can become a big problem in some areas. So to mitigate that, we want to slow the stormwater runoff and limit how much is entering the stream at one time, as much as we can. The other problem here is the water quality control. At MS4 cities specifically, the stormwater and sewer systems are not connected, and so stormwater runs straight to a stream via our inlets into the storm drain system, and then outlets into the streams. And so it's not treated at all. Any pollution that enters those storm drains gets into the streams. The main pollutants of concern in Iowa, or in stormwater, sediment is the primary concern in Iowa. But then you also have hydrocarbons from gas and oils that are on streets from cars and stuff like that. Nutrients from fertilizers that can come from fertilizers used on lawns or in agriculture. Chemicals, paint, stuff like that. Bacteria, pet and animal waste, sanitary waste, and trash and other debris. The paradigm shift started in back in the 70s, where what we were trying to do is just collect, convey, and discharge the water as fast as we could. That's what led to the storm drain system. Just get it off the street and to the waterway as fast as you can. And then, like I said, you run into the problems of erosion, flooding, and pollution in your water. So now what we're trying to do is slow it down, infiltrate as much as we can, and treat that water through the infiltration process. So we're converting some areas from gray to green infrastructure. This is a map of Iowa and its MS4 cities. Also, the universities are MS4s. MS4 just stands for Municipal Separated Storm Sewer Systems. As part of the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. And MS4s are required to meet 6 minimum requirements for stormwater. And those are public outreach about stormwater impacts, public involvement, illicit discharge and elimination program and ordinance, construction site erosion and sediment control ordinance, post-construction stormwater management ordinance, which would include some of these best management practices that we're about to talk about, and good housekeeping policies. So here's some rainfall data from 1948 to 2004 for Iowa. As you can see, over 90% of stormwater events or rain events are what we call like the water quality the water quality amount. And so when we're capturing that, we're trying to infiltrate all of it and treat it as much as we can. And then the flood control volume is 3 inches or more over a 24-hour period. But first, we were just treating the flood control volume, and then here's the same data with the water quality volume listed. So that led to uniform sizing criteria for stormwater best management practices. So you have what we're trying to do with practices is treat all of these. The water quality volume, you're trying to treat the quality of the water. Channel protection volume, you're trying to slow the runoff in order to maintain channels and not erode them. And then those larger rain events, we're just trying to store as much of the water as we can and release it slowly. And each of these best management practices addresses some or all of these issues. You can find out more about the unified sizing criteria in the Iowa Stormwater Management Manual. So the criteria is trying to recharge our groundwater, control water quality, protect channels, and prevent overbank and extreme flooding. So with green infrastructure practices, we're trying to mimic the historic hydrology using more natural systems. We want to protect the water quality and capture pollutants through infiltration, filtration, and pollutant breakdown. We want to reduce peak flow, volume runoff reduction, and reduce the flash floods to prevent stream corridor erosion and reduce runoff, and by retaining more water. And then another effect of some of these practices is they create a more beautiful landscape or even recreational benefits. So for green infrastructure best management practices, there's some for water quality, which will do infiltration, bioretention, landscapes, and hardscapes. And then flood control, which are detention retention basins and constructed wetlands. Stormwater treatment trains are use of a combination of best management practices between a site and a waterway that combine multiple practices, sending the water through them to do all of these things in a more comprehensive way. Rainscaping Iowa is an effort of ISWEP, bringing stormwater management to an individual commercial and residential lot basis is what rainscaping is. It's just sort of the difference between rainscaping and green infrastructure is the scale to which it's done. And so rainscaping is just landscaping for clean water and to protect streets. Okay, getting into some of our practices, soil management and restoration on urban sites. So soil quality restoration. A lot of the times we just think of soil as dirt, which is more of like a construction material, but really soil is a living material. So you have the plants on top, but you also have living organisms in the soil that create more pores in the soil and increase the storage and infiltration capacity of soils. Historic Iowa landscapes had 8 to 10% organic matter in soils, and typically now we just see about 1 to 2%. And so SQR is trying to replenish that organic matter. Yeah, so with the goal of getting back to that historic landscape. So here's some images of people like getting back, like applying SQR. So first you're going to deep till or rip the soils with topsoil and compost. And then you'll aerate the soils, which is here on the right, and add another 3/4 inch of compost and then overseeding. And so you can see this is the house there at the bottom right picture has just had SQR done, and the grass is just starting to grow there again. And then in this picture, you can see a yard that had SQR right next to a yard that has not. It's a pretty good image of how much better a lawn can look after applying SQR. Also, a lot of cities in the state, including Davenport here, have cost share programs for soil quality restoration or just adding best management practices to your property in general. And that's another thing that ISWEP is trying to promote as much as we can. Rain gardens, they rely on an existing healthy soil profile. They're located, you can put them in shallow basins on your landscape, or you can landscape a basin for them to be in. They're designed rather than engineered to capture and temporarily store water, a water quality volume, so 1.25 inches in 24 hours or less, using soils and vegetation. They can be enhanced with an underdrain system. This is typically used with less than ideal soils. They absorb rainwater and remove pollutants from stormwater runoff. And you can plant them with any plants you think look pretty, or you can use natives to get a deeper root system there and assist infiltration further. Here's a side profile of a rain garden. You can see the deeper root systems, the water pools there where the plants are, and then slowly infiltrates into the ground. Prevents the big puddles in yards that are just turf grass. And here's an example of a rain garden in somebody's yard. This is where we get into more of the green infrastructure practices as opposed to rainscaping. Bioretention cells used for streetscaping, bump outs, right away in commercial areas. They're structural stormwater controls, landscaped shallow basins between like paved areas, as you can see here in the picture. And they're engineered to capture and temporarily pond or store water using soil and vegetation, and then slowly release it. And here's a side profile of a biocell. Here, I don't know if you guys can see my pointer, but here, number 2 over on the left is a an inlet for the water coming off of the pavement. And those are located along the whole biocell. And then you have a smaller buffer area where larger debris that could like plug up the biocell will be captured. And then it gets into the pooling area where you have all your vegetation and the water can pool up to a certain level. And then, yeah, so here you have just, this is just listing like the mulch area and the modified soil area, chip layer and aggregate that it all filters through before it gets to the perforated pipe that takes the stormwater out of the bioretention cell. Tree filter boxes are sort of small scale bioretention cells. They're used where you have storm drains, existing storm drains. And so instead of just dropping the water right into the storm sewer system, it goes, the water is guided into these tree filter boxes and it percolates down through there into the storm sewer system. So it again slows the water, treats the water before it gets into our storm sewer systems. If you're around the Quad Cities, I know we have some in Davenport and in Rock Island. You can find those. Bioswales are an even larger green infrastructure practice used in subdivisions, drainage areas, and near commercial properties. They're an engineered best management practice. They're designed to capture and treat water quality volume for a drainage area. So larger drainage area than rain garden, but still designed for that 1.25 inches or less. But they can also, that's just for the treatment of the water. They can also convey larger storm events. You can see in this picture here, they have dams along them to slow the stormwater flow as the water goes through them when you have those larger storm events. Here's just a design of two different types of bioswales, parabolic and trapezoidal. This just is talking about, the curvature there. And here's a bioswale in Davenport. You can see the check dam there in the middle, and then the vegetated area along the deepest part of the bioswale. Another practice that can be used for rainscaping or green infrastructure are native plant filters. These would be strips or areas of native plants. Native prairie have deeper root systems than like turf grass. And so with those deeper systems, they aerate the soil and increase retention and infiltration of those soils. An advantage of native prairie plants is they're already adapted to Iowa climate. And if they're properly designed, they can capture and infiltrate stormwater, improve the value of a site, improve aesthetics, support wildlife, and increase soil and water quality. There's also native options for turf grass. Buffalo grass is native to the Midwest and can be used and, looks like a normal lawn, but it's a native also. Hardscaping, which I talked about or I mentioned earlier, would be permeable pavement systems. These can also be used on a small scale for like a driveway if you wanted to, but more often we see them for alleys or streets. They're engineered to drain and store stormwater and slowly release it from the rock chamber below. They have they may also have some infiltration capacity based on the type of soil underneath them. And so you can see here a side profile of some permeable pavers. You can see the pavers there at the top, and then below you have increasing sizes of rock layers that filter and store some of that water before it gets to the perforated pipe there on the bottom right. Here in Iowa, some cities that have a lot of permeable pavers. West Union has 16 blocks of street and sidewalks. And also Charles City has 48 blocks. Another practice you can implement at home or on a large scale is rainwater harvesting. You can do this at home with a rain barrel attached to your downspout. But once you do that, you might find that you need more than one. A lot of rainwater coming off of your home's roof. But here you see some cisterns on the top of a building, of a commercial building. They can be located above or below ground, and sometimes with these cistern systems, they hook them up to the plumbing inside of the building, and it can be used for toilet or urinal flushing. Green roofs, another green infrastructure practice. Only some buildings can have this implemented on them. You need to have an engineer come in and check the structure of the building and if it can support the weight of a green roof. But they're engineered to capture and infiltrate stormwater. They're usually covered with sedums or other plants that do well without a lot of water, so that they can survive between rain events. Green roofs also have the added benefit of reducing energy costs by cooling the building, and can reduce the heat island effect of urban environments. So here's a side profile of some green roofs. You have the plant layer, the growing medium, or the soil, and then a few engineered layers before the roof deck, or manufactured layers. And then we get into the more flood control best management practices, larger scale water quantity BMPs, which are detention basins or dry ponds, and retention basins or wet ponds, and also constructed wetlands. Why we need these water quantity BMPs is sort of indicated by this graph here. So after development happens, you can see, and like it's converted to gray, a gray landscape, impervious surfaces. You see this red line where you have huge spikes in the quantity of runoff happening, and then it drops off quickly. And so what we want to do is flatten that curve as much as we can to reduce flash flooding events. And so what we have now is the green line, or what you would have before implementing a detention or retention basin or constructed wetlands would be the green line here. And then the smaller orange line is afterwards. And you can see that they store the water longer and release it at a slower pace through their outlets. So retention ponds or wet ponds store and slowly release storm event quantities of water. But they're also a permanent pool of water. There's always water in them. they can provide additional water quality benefits if they have a multi-stage outlet with other BMPs included there. And they also provide the added benefit of recreation. You can get out there in a kayak or canoe, do some fishing, stuff like that. Constructed wetlands are intentionally placed wetlands to provide stormwater mitigation. They can help reduce flooding. There's some areas of constructed wetlands that are permanent pools of water and others that are dry areas that provide a variety of aquatic habitat and treatment zones. They can recharge the groundwater, which is one of our goals here in Iowa. They make for an attractive landscape, and they can be used for educational purposes, education about wildlife and stuff like that. Stormwater treatment trains are incorporating multiple best management practices on a specific property, and this is an example of that. So over on the left to right, you have a bioswale, soil quality restoration on the lawn there, a rain garden, rain barrel, permeable pavers on the driveway, and then a native plant garden on the far right there. And so by incorporating all these, you capture more water. You're slowing the runoff and filtering as much of that stormwater as you can on a property. So next actions are, with climate change becoming more frequent or causing more frequent, intense, and larger rainfall events, we need to think about how can we provide more resiliency to our communities. How can we use green infrastructure on sites to manage stormwater runoff? Can cities and counties support installation of green infrastructure through local cost share programs, and how to get the community to utilize those cost share programs? You can always find out more at our website, iowastormwater.org. With partners of Scott County Watershed being a member, they can also provide you with any of our educational materials through the website. You can also find out more about cost share programs at raincampaign.org. That's primarily Des Moines-based program, but they want to expand it to the state. They've made all of their materials available to anyone, and they're just trying to get people to use their cost share programs for their own properties. And with that, I will take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noah. I see we had, looks like 2 questions coming in. I think you might have answered one earlier in the presentation, but maybe if you just wanted to touch on it again. What are MS4 cities? Just kind of recap that again.
Yeah, so MS4 stands for Municipal Separated Storm Sewer Systems. So it means that you have a separated storm drain system from your wastewater system, meaning that the stormwater is not being treated at your wastewater plant. And it also has to do with the size of the city and if they're close to, I'm missing the word here, but basically like polluted water resources. That's what makes them become an MS4 city, and then they have to abide by these regulations. They get permitted by a permit for them, and then they have to abide by these 6 minimum requirements. In Scott County, Davenport and Bettendorf are both MS4s. Yeah, I don't think any other ones are around here. But anything else I can touch on with that? I mean, I can go through the 6 minimum requirements that they have to meet is public outreach and education with about stormwater impacts, getting the public involved. They have to have an ordinance for illicit discharge and elimination program. They have to have an ordinance for construction site erosion and sediment control, an ordinance for post-construction stormwater management, and good housekeeping policies, which is also applied to construction.
Thanks for going over that. I've definitely heard about MS4 cities and knew some of the intricacies, but haven't had the chance to go through it all. So that's helpful information for me as well.
Yeah,
it looks like we have
a lot of our educational materials are geared towards that. It's typically our MS4 members that are asking us for specific educational materials to develop because of that public outreach and education about stormwater impacts. So, you know, I'll make a brochure for them, and then they can distribute it as they see fit to meet that requirement.
Very good. Looks like we have another question here asking about who made the decision to recommend buffalo grass for Eastern Iowa. You know that. Looks like their experience is that the area sorry, having a hard time reading this here, receives too much annual rainfall, and so that grass doesn't do very well. So maybe in regards to some of those rainscaping practices.
Well, I had help from my boss on that. So if you want to drop me your email, I can send you why she thought that, or thought to include that. This could have been more for Iowa as a whole rather than just you know, the Mississippi Valley here. But yeah, it was more of just using buffalo grass as an alternative to your typical turf grass on lawns.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any other questions come in, but we'll give folks a little bit more of a chance here. In the meantime, I'd love to know, Noah, what's your favorite greenscaping practice or rainscaping practice?
Well, I guess my favorite would have to be, you know, the retention basins, the wet ponds, because, you know, you can get out there and do some recreation on them. They're a little more fun.
Yeah, it's a little hard to kayak in a rain garden or a bioswale. A little tricky.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I think that concludes our presentation. I really appreciate all your time with this, Noah, and all the work that you do to help improve water quality throughout the state, but especially in Scott County, we're a little biased towards that. And just as he mentioned, if there's any questions, you can reach out to him or you can reach out to partners and we can get you connected. And again, this has been recorded and will be posted on our YouTube page if you want to go back and refer to anything. But thank you all for participating today, for watching this webinar. Thank you again, Noah, for your presentation.
Thanks for having me.
Everyone has a great rest of their day and can enjoy some of the sunshine while we got it. Thank you, everyone.